So folks, I want to welcome you all to the Cloud SIEM Fundamentals. SIEM stands for Security, Information, and Event Management. And it is our product that allows you and I to manage security incidences and basically see what's going on. My name is John Meredith. I will be your instructor for this. Just like before, I hail from Bedford, New Hampshire. That's where I'm at. I'm actually teaching from my home here. This is what you see behind me is my home, bedroom, now an office. So this is what happens when your kids grow and gone and leave the house. You can commandeer their bedrooms as an office. But anyway, I've been with Sumo a little over 2 years and been teaching since about 1986 when I started as a Navy instructor. And I've worked as an IT manager, a DBA, a programmer, a network admin, all kinds of fun stuff. So otherwise, just want to welcome you to class. I'm assisted here by Odell. So Odell, would you like to say hi?
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening. Welcome back for some of you. You're in great hands with John, so hopefully you have tons of questions for him. Good luck and enjoy. Have fun. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Somebody mentioned they can't hear me. So are you able to hear me? Yes or no?
Yeah, I'm able to hear you.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure we got the audio problems squared away. All right. Somebody's got their hands raised. So Abur Nasser, do you is there a question, sir? Tell you what, let's do this. If you can hear me, would you please raise your hand? Okay. Lower all the hands. If you can hear me, raise your hand. That way I know that we've got good audio here. Usually my audio checks out fine. So there we go. Looks like we are in good shape. Okay. And I see we've got a lot of folks here have joined. So let me nail out the talk. Again, if you want to, by the way, if you want to ask your question directly, you can unmute your mic and you can ask your question directly, or you can put it in the chat. Whichever works for you, works for us. So anyway, looks like I said, looks like a lot of folks can hear me. So hopefully we are in good shape. Yeah. We'll lower all the hands. And like I said, let's go ahead and get started. So, and I'm going to stop the video sharing here just to save some bandwidth. And so let's go ahead and get started. So our game plan here, we're going to talk about the Cloud SIEM data pipeline. How do we get data into the Cloud SIEM information? And what does that process look like? Then we're going to jump into the labs and we're going to log into the Cloud SIEM and we're going to explore the user interface. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about how we can do threat investigation using this Cloud SIEM product. And then we'll do some labs to investigate some insights. We'll do 2 labs, labs 2 and 3. Okay. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how we can customize and tune the Cloud SIEM product. Then we'll do 3 labs, 1 for rule tuning, 1 for creating custom rules, and 1 for creating custom insights. And then that will pretty much wrap up the class. And as before, you'll have an opportunity to get certified. Now, one thing, for those of you who've been with us all week, you have taken some certification classes, like certification tests, I hope. Again, we are offering a Uber Eats voucher. And so, in fact, we need to update this slide. Bear with me a second while I do that. It doesn't give me a link to update the slide, so I'll fix that offline. But the short of it is there's actually a form that you're going to fill out as opposed to sending an email to training-promotions. I'm waiting for this to reload. I'm not sure why it's taking so long. There we go. But there's actually a form that you fill out. Now, one thing with regards to the form, you can put all 3 certifications that you took this week that you passed on the same form. And what's going to happen is each one of those certifications is going to result in a $15 Uber Eats voucher. Now, one little thing that you may not be aware of that I'm going to explain to you is if for some reason you do submit all 3 vouchers in, we can only send out 2 vouchers a day. We're limited by accounting rules to a certain amount, and therefore we can only send 2 vouchers in a day, and then the following day we'll send that 3rd voucher. So the short of it is, I want you to be aware of that. And again, we'll update the slide, provide the right form information. So I want to make you aware of that. And again, who says there is no such thing as a free lunch? By the way, for my friend in India, we also have a offer with Ziggy. We currently have some Ziggy vouchers that you can use out there in India. So anyway, let's press on here and talk about the Cloud SIEM data pipeline and how this thing works. Our Cloud SIEM is our, as I said, security information and event management system. It lets you see threats and things to your environment and lets you proactively manage them. And it does it in really kind of an awesome fashion with regards to ingesting a lot of different logs from a lot of different sources, just like we do in regular Sumo CIP, continuous intelligence platform. And basically, this is kind of an extension onto that CIP program. This enterprise-grade cloud platform lets you investigate your security and operational issues in real time and makes it very easy for you to identify what those issues are. So it really is quite the time saver and very, very helpful. Normally what happens is, of course, we have data coming into the Cloud CIP system, the continuous intelligence platform. That's what you played with yesterday and the day before, those of you in class. And in there, we have our normal collection and ingestion process, right? We stand up collectors and we set up and do ingestion. Now, if you want to know how that works here, there is a Cloud SIEM admin class that we set up a collector for the Cloud SIEM portion. Or we also teach it on our regular admin class that has how to set up a collector and the sources and things like that. But the process as we collect and ingest this, we refer to these as messages. So we have a bunch of messages which correspond to some information, all this log stuff coming in. So we've got a series of messages. We will then take those messages and we will parse them. We will look at the various fields and extract out the field values and things like that. We will map them. So for example, we parse through a log, we see something that looks like an IP address, we'll parse it out. We'll map it to the specific field metadata tag name it has. And we also may enrich it by looking at things like CrowdStrike and see if that's a known threat, stuff like that. So the output of this process where we parse, map, and enrich is going to be called records. And so that's going to generate a whole bunch of records that we'll see. We then take those records and we apply them to specific rules. Now, these rules are created for the most part by Sumo Logic as part of the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So if you're familiar with the MITRE ATT&CK framework, you know that they've created lots and lots of information of known threats, known issues, how to deal with those issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we follow that framework. So we create a bunch of rules. Now, additionally, you can create some rules, and we'll talk about that later in the class, how you can create your own rules. Now, we update our rules about every 2 weeks. So we provide an update every 2 weeks, unless it's something more urgent. Something recently comes out that's a big threat, we will immediately apply it. We will fix it and apply it immediately. And so the point is we maintain our rules, but you have to maintain yours. Okay. And then we also, if we do find that our records match a rule, then we will also extract out the entity. The entity could be things like the host name, the username, the IP address, something that typically identifies the who. And that's going to generate a signal. And so signals are known issues and known things that we have to deal with. Now, most SIEM products stop there. Ours goes a step further. We're going to correlate those signals and look at the signals by entity. And if there's a certain numeric value of those signals, score, if you will, that adds up and is greater than 12, greater than equal to 12, within a 2-week period of time, we're going to generate an insight. And so that insight makes it very easy for you to see these threats. Because usually when somebody comes knocking on your door with malicious intent, they don't just knock on your door. They knock on your door, tweak the ports, do all kinds of interesting things. And so all of those individual signals we correlate and generally generate an insight out of. And I'm going to show you what this all looks like here in just a few minutes in the tool so that it can make more sense. So again, we take, we have this fictitious company, Sumo Logic Coffee, provides a great cup of coffee. We go through the normal collection and ingestion process, just like we do in the continuous intelligence platform product. Then once we get those messages, we will then parse them, map them, and enrich them. When we parse them, for example, we may see a log that looks something like this. We will see that this recognizes this in an IP address, although it doesn't have decimal points. So as part of our parsing, we will convert that to a IP address, 127.0.0.1. And we will also assign it to mapping, we'll assign it to our metadata tag. In this case, the source device IP metadata tag. So again, this is coming from this. Alex@travellogic.com would become also a username. So I might have a username equals alex.travellogic.com, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm also going to take it one step farther. I'm also going to enrich this. So I'm going to go and look at CrowdStrike on this IP address to see if it's any known issues that we should be aware of. And therefore, I can provide information from CrowdStrike as part of this process. And that, as I said, will generate our records. Our records will then compare based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And again, if you want to look up MITRE ATT&CK, this is actually how you spell it with the ampersand. And so our rules are based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and they have a value, a score to them. So for example, somebody maybe who hasn't logged out, that may be a relatively low score. Somebody who's providing a phishing email, that's a higher score, that sort of thing. Well, they all have scores from 0 to 11, actually 0 to 10 for test purposes. And so when the rule gets created, it has a score somewhere between 0 and 10. And then what happens here is that those scores, if I have a record that matches this rule, I'm going to extract out the entity, the host name, the IP address, whatever, try to figure out who that is, and I'm going to generate a signal. And that signal is a signal of interest, something we want to be careful of. But we're going to take it one step further. We're going to correlate those signals by the entity. So by the IP address, by the host name, by the username, whatever. And again, if the value of those scores, and each rule, like I said, has a score, if that is 12 or greater in a 2-week period of time, that is what we automatically generates an insight for us. So that's basically how this process works. Any questions so far about that? Give me a second here. I'm just going to go down and make sure you all have the ability to unmute your mics and ask your questions. Just bear with me here a moment. Thank you. All right, so let's do this. Let's go ahead and log into our training environment. Now, I'm going to show you something a little different here with regards to our training environment, but it's the same login that many of you have used over the last couple of days. So one, I'd like you to fire up Google Chrome or Firefox, and I'd like you to go to service.sumologic.com. That's service.sumologic.com. So when you go to service.sumologic.com, it asks you for an email address and it asks you for a password. Now, excuse me, there we go. What I'd like you to do next is I'd like you to pick a 3-digit number. Those of you in class yesterday and the day before, you already probably picked one. You can pick another number. If you would type it into the chat box, that's great. I see Grant is going to be 007 James Bond today. That's cool. But type in your 3-digit number so I know what numbers you're taking. We just want to avoid a lot of duplication. Occasional duplication is not a big deal, but if we have a whole bunch of folks, it could be a bit of a problem. Okay. And then you and I are going to log in as training plus analyst, and we're going to replace those 3 hashtags with your 3-digit number. Now I'm going to take and use my 3-digit number, 985. And you may ask yourself, why is John taking 985? 985 is the hull number of the USS Cushing, the last destroyer I was on when I ended my Navy career. And then, of course, we're going to put an @ and put in here at sumologic.com. Those of you who don't know, I spent about 20 years in the US Navy, so had myself a great time. So again, there's going to be your user, your email address. Again, don't forget the @sumologic.com. Don't forget to replace the hashtags with the 3-digit number. And then, of course, the password here is LOGS, capital LOGS, 2022, ! And if I show you that, it looks just like this, logs 2022 ! And if you type this in, you should be able to click sign in and it should let you in. It might help if I get rid of this comma. Be careful about typos. See, Odell, you're not the only one who can fat finger things. Okay. And that will log you in. All right. Looks like we are all in good shape. What I'd like you to do is once you get logged in, I'd like you to go ahead and raise your hand. That way I know you're in and we are in fact ready to go. Okay. So I've got about 8 hands up out of 25. So hopefully we'll get a little bit better round of effort there. If you're having problems logging in, let us know what the problem is. You know, if you get an error about need to verify credentials or something. Again, you're logging into our Sumo Logic training environment, right? service.sumologic.com. Okay. Again, when you log in, make sure, hang on a second, let me log out for a second. Make sure that you type in training plus analyst with that 3-digit number. @sumologic.com. It's got to be an email. And the email's got to end in @sumologic.com. And again, it's be training plus sign analyst with that 3-digit number. Don't put any of the hashtags in there. Okay. And then the password, as I said before, is logs 2022 exclamation mark. So that should work. If that doesn't work, if you're still having problems, Amir, try using 985. Okay, so you're logging in Train Plus Analyst 985 at sumologic.com. Good. And what are you logging in, Amir, as the password? I assume it's LOGS. Okay, got it now. Excellent. Good to hear. All right, excellent. Now, just so you know, and just to be fair here, I'm going to log in as me with my account. And there's a reason why I'm going to, and I'll show you in just a minute why. Just bear with me here a moment. Oops, let's turn that off. And so I have logged in as me, and you'll notice I got a couple of tabs here open. And those of you who've been with Odell earlier this week know that you can clear those tabs by clicking on any 3 dots on any one of the tabs, and you can say close all tabs. Now, what you're in right here is the CIP environment, the continuous intelligence environment, okay? And this continuous intelligence environment is where we write queries, metric queries, log queries, and all of that good stuff. So this is the CIP environment. By the way, one other thing I'd like to do here real quick. I am going to upload for you all a document. This document is our lab guide. So bear with me here just a second while I upload here the lab guide, and you should be able to download it from the Zoom chat. If you cannot download it from the Zoom chat, if you would send Odell your email address, we will email it to you. But in a minute, I'm going to show you where you can get this guide as well. So first of all, I think we're all in. Anybody not in? Okay, cool. From the CIP, before I go into the CSE or the Cloud SIEM Enterprise, I want to show you where you can get a copy of that lab guide as well as the recordings and stuff like that. So as you know, if you've been with us for the last couple of days, if you click on this home tab, you click on certification, you click on get certified. Now I'm logged in as me. Because I'm logged in as me, I see a whole bunch of things here. You're logged in as a training analyst account. You don't see all of these things, okay? So for example, become a Sumo Logic expert is a self-paced training area. And I see it, but you don't. And the reason we don't have you see it is we turned it off for those accounts. We don't want training analyst 985 to get credit for it. We want you with your name to get credit for it. That's why it's turned off. If you log into your Sumo Logic environment with your credentials, you'll see it. And here, by the way, is where you can see the log information, the passwords, and all that good stuff. Under security, if you go into here, here's where you can take the self-paced version of our Cloud SIEM fundamentals or our Cloud SIEM admin. These are all self-paced courses that you can take. What are their costs? They're free. So feel free to take, apply, have a good time. Okay. So there is that. Let me go back a little bit here, if you don't mind, go back to where I was. Again, here, there's a section called recorded live training. You can see that. I can see that. So if I click on recorded live training, here is where I can see any recordings for any of our classes, and I can get any of the slides, any of the lab guides. So yesterday, we showed you that in the cloud security monitoring class, how you could go into here and get the lab guides and the recordings and all that stuff. Here is the Cloud SIEM fundamentals. And if I click on that, and if I just take a moment to register and click on it, and boom, I'm registered. Here I can see a recording of this class. Same content as what I'm going to go over, same material. Additionally, here's a copy of the slides that you can use for the exam. Very handy to have. And then also here is the student lab guide. So if you couldn't grab the lab guide that I uploaded in the chat box, you can go here and grab it as well. Let me take this link, if you don't mind. Let me put it in the chat box so you guys have it in case you want it. Okay. Any questions so far? I'm going to close that tab up. All right. So here we are again in the CIP, Continuous Intelligence Platform. Okay. But what we're going to do is we're going to spend the day in the CSE, Cloud SIEM Enterprise Platform. And to get into the Cloud SIEM Enterprise Platform, if your navigation panel is closed, like mine is, if you go up here where it says Sumo Logic, or you got this stack of pancakes, and if you click on it, you'll see down below here is our main menu. And in our main menu, one of the options is Cloud SIEM Enterprise, the CSE platform. So we really have two products, actually three products, the CIP, the Cloud SIEM Enterprise, and we also have another one called the Cloud SOAR. SOAR standing for Security, Orchestration, and Automation Response. We don't have the training materials built for that material yet, so we're in the process of working on that. But if you click on this Cloud SIEM Enterprise, this will take us to the CSE, or Cloud SIEM Enterprise area. Hang on a second. Let me interesting. Let me just try something real quick. Bear with me. And once again, let's try going there again. See what happens. Okay. All right. This issue that's happened here is actually an issue that happens to Sumo employees. It is not something that is caused by you all. It has to do with the fact that I'm not on the VPN. So bear with me a second while I get logged in here to the VPN. I should have done this ahead of time. So let me try this again. There we go. Okay, good. So I had the VPN open, but it wasn't running. So that's the problem. Anyway, my DNS information wasn't correct. Therefore, I couldn't resolve it. That's the problem. So here we are in the Cloud SIEM Enterprise solution. And just to be clear, here I am. From here, I should be able to click on this, and it should take me to my Cloud SIEM Enterprise environment. Okay. Now, what is it that we're looking at? Well, first of all, this button up here that says Sumo is our home button, and it will take us back to this screen at any time. Right below that, I see that we're online. I can see my range here, and I can select whatever range I want. This is the range of the information that I'm seeing across this panel. So this is going back 24 hours. This information over here is going back 24 hours. If I change it to something else, obviously it will reflect that. So in the last 24 hours, I have ingested 16,000 records. That's down a little bit. That's what it's trying to tell me. It's down about 9% or whatever. I've generated 53 signals. And I've generated from those 53 signals 3 insights. Now, I can see here how long it's taking me from the time I get an insight until I respond to it, until I remediate it. So we have these insight metrics that will keep track as you and I use the system to see how long things are taking. Here I can see that I've got 2 new insights. I've got one that's been changed, its status has been changed to in progress. I've got 0 in custom and 0 in closed. You can customize the statuses if you want to a bit. So you can add some new statuses that are here if you want. We teach that in the admin class, by the way. And then I can see when did my new insights occur based on a timeline here. So this information over here is just general information about insights and remediation and all that. Here is my heads up display, and I suspect that's where your eyes focused when you first got here. We actually had, when this was created, we actually had the developers from World of Warcraft user interface advise us on how to create a interface that would reduce fatigue. Because let's face it, this can be kind of hard to look at. So this was actually built from the same user interface folks that built World of Warcraft. And so what I see out here in the outer circle is these are my records. These are my records. And then in the middle here with my little columns here, these are my signals. These are my signals that were generated. And then here I can see my various insights. And the red triangles denote it's a new insight. The yellow triangle notes it's in progress. They're color-coded a little bit differently. I could click on these insights here. There's lots of different ways I get to my insight, but I let it go for right now. So again, my records on the outside, my signals in the middle, my insights in the very insight area. Now, it typically takes my last insight that it has, and it shows it to me here. So I can see this is insight 15040. Now, what does that number signify? Every time we generate an insight, we give it a unique number. So we can track it, so we can manage it and stuff like that. So we'll automatically generate that number. It says here command and control. Command and control, it derived that from the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So based on the rules and the issues that generated this insight, it called it command and control. We also see who the entity is. The entity is a user named Rico Dynamite. And that's who my user is. Now, in some cases, as I go through here, you'll see I've got these little 6 dots, and that's called the context action button. And I can click on this context action button. And if I want to, I can look and see, do a Google who is or whatever on Rico Dynamite to see if I know anything about them. I can also look in the Sumo logic search logs and generate a Sumo logic search to see if Rico Dynamite appears in any of my other systems. Lots of things that you and I can do here. Now, on this display over on my x-axis here, I have a time. So I can see I have 3 signals that occurred over 5 days. So starting on May 14th, my first signal, and there's a little blue icon right here, denotes that's my signal. And on my y-axis here is severity. So again, it's a little bit above my midline point. My second signal is down here. My third signal is up there. And so I can see when these signals approximately occurred, and I can investigate this and play with it and all that stuff. And we'll see it in just a few minutes. Down here is my syslog area. So as you and I make changes to this, if we resolve things, all that stuff, it's being written into our syslog, and we can see that right here in this lower right-hand corner. Now, up here, I can also click on insights, and I can see all my insights. I can see my insights listed one after the other, latest insight first, or if I want to, there's 2 icons here, show my list or show my board. Remember, insights can have a status. And so I can, you can, we can take this insight and we can see what's new, what's in progress, what emails have been sent. Give me a second here. And what things, we can scroll this bar over to the right. I can see what things are closed, okay? Now, we don't typically close a lot of these insights because they're here for training purposes, right? I don't really want them. I don't really want to move from in progress either, but some people, when they go through the course, they do this, and they, part of the exercise. But when we, like I said, we automatically want to have some new insights that we can investigate, that you and I can troubleshoot as part of the class. Okay. Again, these statuses can be customized by your administrator. We teach that in the admin class. I can also, if I want to, look at my signals. So I can see what my signals are, what signals are coming in. I can see them associated by various entities, IP addresses or whatever. I can also, if I want to, look by entity. So here I can see what my entities are and what their activity scores are. So who my largest threat or concern threat is. We've got such cool names as Napoleon Dynamite, right? So again, we can see, whether it's a username, host name, IP address, whatever, we can see the who that's involved in. And I could, if I want to, look at my records. Now, because we receive and ingest lots and lots of records, like in the thousands, here's something you probably have to go searching for. And really, the only people that need to worry about looking at records are when we set up a collector to make sure that our records are being processed properly. This is about the only time we'll actually go into the records. And then last but not least, here under content, I have certain options. You have certain options. We can create and modify rules. We can do some rule tuning. We can do custom insights. We'll get into that in this class. Over here, you'll see I've got a little alarm bell and a little red gleam. If I click on this, this is our documentation and our announcements. Every time we make an update and we update your Cloud SIEM environment, you'll get this little red dot, and we'll announce what things we have changed. So you can go into those announcements and see what things we have changed, what what's going on, that sort of thing. So also, like I said, this is also where our here's where our documentation is. So under the question mark, this is where our documentation is. This used to be one icon. We split out the notifications here. So here I can see my documentation. I can see my environment, what version of CSE I'm using, that sort of thing. Okay, I see they've changed that too. Okay. Over here, if I want to, I can click on this grid and I can go back to my continuous intelligence platform. So if you want to go back to the Sumo Logic CIP, I click on that icon, it takes me back here. It actually opens up another tab and takes me back here. So I still have my tab here open. And then over here, finally, I can see who I'm logged in as. Okay. Now I'm going to actually log out of here for a second. I'm actually going to log out of here for a second. And I'm going to explain to you why. When I log in here into our environment, you'll notice that when I go in here to the content, I see a lot more options. Okay. The options I see are because I'm a full administrator on this environment. You're not. We set this up for you as a typical analyst. So I want you to be aware that there are permissions and things that you can have to here. Notice I also have a gear icon that you didn't have. And that gear icon, again, gives me different permissions, different things that I can do that we do in the admin class. We don't necessarily do in this class. But for example, here, if I want to define statuses and I want to create a status, a new status, I can do that. If I want to change the actions and things we can talk about, we'll talk about actions in just a little bit. I have permissions to do that. You don't. By the way, the permissions for this tool are actually managed in our CIP solution. We talk about it in the Cloud SIEM admin class. We talk about it in the administration class. So that stuff is all managed through the CIP security and groups and roles and things like that, or users and roles, excuse me. By the way, you'll notice this thing automatically updates every few seconds. It'll automatically update and let us know what's going on. Are there any questions about the interface? Now, for those of you who downloaded this lab guide, okay, is there a question, sir? You raised your hand. What's the question, sir? You should be able to unmute your mic and ask your question directly, or you can type it in the chat box. Okay. Okay. ASIF says this is in use for all cloud service providers. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. What do you mean by all cloud service providers? You mean AWS, Azure, or okay? This we run on AWS. Okay, so this is being run on an AWS environment right now. Our whole environment is. Now, we do support Azure. We do support Windows and all that stuff. So yes, we could inject things from your Azure environments here. So yes, we could play with Google Cloud Platform and all that stuff. We could get all the Windows events from your Windows logs and all that stuff. So yes, we do support all the different providers. But what you're looking at here for our Cloud SIEM environment is actually on an AWS environment. Okay, we had to pick something to run on, so we picked AWS. That's true for both the Cloud SIEM as well as the CIP. They're both run on AWS. And of course, their software is a solution. So hopefully that answers your question, sir. Appreciate the question. All right. Now, let me, again, take a moment here. And hopefully, like I said, you all grabbed you're welcome. Hopefully, you all grabbed the lab guide from earlier. But here in lab 0, we logged in, which we did. Here in lab 1, we explored the interface. And we did that. That's what we did in lab 1. Okay. And there's some tips and tricks and all that stuff. Now, before we get into lab 2 and 3, I want to go back into my slides here a little bit. So for labs 2 and 3, we are going to investigate a insight, right? The first one I'm going to walk you through, and then I'm going to give you some time to investigate another insight. So in lab 2, I'm going to walk you through that. In lab 3, I'm going to have you do it by yourself. Okay, or I'm sorry, 2A, I'm going to walk you through it. 2C, I'm going to have you do it by yourself. I'll explain in a minute. We've got 3 different use cases, right? 3 different fictitious companies. Well, we've got Financial Logic, and Financial Logic have a lot of investors dealing with financial data. Specifically, they're worried about GDPR since we have offices in Europe. And of course, they have different privacy rules about GDPR. So we want to make sure that we are secure and we're securing people's data per GDPR. We also have Sumo Pharma, who's worried about HIPAA and data privacy with regards to healthcare data. And then the last one we have is Sumo Coffee, which is worried about PCI. Asif, is there a question, sir? Well, you don't need to raise your hand. You can ask your question anytime. So feel free to raise your, ask your question anytime. And again, you can verbally ask it if you want, or you can type it in. It might be easier to ask it verbally. So these are our 3 fictitious companies that we're going to deal with. And so when we look at our labs, you're going to find we've got 3 different labs, one for a financial side, one for a pharma side, one for a Sumo Coffee side. Okay. And what we're going to do is we are going to let this Cloud SIEM detect and monitor to see what's going on. We are going to realize something's going on. We're going to investigate this. We're going to see basically what the story is that the insight and the signals are telling us. And then we're, of course, going to take action to respond, right? This action may include things like quarantining the machines, running antivirus software on the machines, changing passwords, that sort of thing, talking to our users, re-educating them on the importance of password security and things like that. You get the idea. So a day in the life of the SOC analyst with Cloud SIEM, and you'll see a test question or 2 about this, is that they're going to go in here and they're going to find an insight. So they're going to grab a new insight. Now they may get assigned an insight, or they may just go in there and see an insight that needs to be investigated. Depends on how you've set it up. Then they're going to investigate that insight. They're going to look at the signals that make up that insight. This is what we're going to do in a few minutes. We go through the exercise. Then we're going to, based on those signals, we're going to say, what is this thing trying to tell me, right? What is happening here based on my signals? We're going to hypothesize to see what we think is going on and what actions we want to take. We will then take actions, and you'll find we've got an actions pull down in our insight that we can see. And in that actions, we can maybe send an email to our SOC team or to our network operations center or whoever we need to do that. We can customize this actions if we need to. Our administrator can. We can create a JIRA ticket, whatever, but we're also going to document what actions we've taken, add some comments in there. And then finally, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to update its status. Maybe it's moved to in progress, maybe it's moved to closed, maybe it's moved to whatever. And so at the end of that, when we've finished up that insight, we're going to go grab another one. So this is the day of a life of a SOC analyst, investigating and seeing what's going on. Okay. As I said before, all of our rules are based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And if you go to mitreattack.org, you will find that there talks about these different techniques and different tactics that it uses and which are which and what's what and all that fun stuff. You'll find that when we create rules, we can assign the MITRE ATT&CK framework associated with those rules. Okay. Again, all the rules that we at Sumo Logic create, we know this MITRE ATT&CK framework well. We will maintain those rules. Any rules that you create, you have to maintain. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these use cases, and we're going to, as I said, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through an insight, and then I'm going to have you do an insight on your own. So that's our game plan. So let's do this. Let me stop the slides. Let me go out here to our lab guide. And here in our lab guide, the one I'm going to walk you through is Lab 2A, the financial logic demo. And what I want to do is I want to look for an insight called persistence with initial access. Now, that's what we're going to investigate, persistence with initial access. So if I go into my Cloud SIEM environment, and I could go into my insights here, and in my insights, I could scroll down and try to find persistence with initial access. And I can see there's one right there, it's in progress. But what I'm going to do is I can search for it. You and I can search for it. A bunch of different fields here that I can look for. I'm going to look for name. And I can say name is or is not, or contains. I'm going to start with contains. And I am going to start typing. And as I start typing, you'll see that it automatically kind of gives me my choices. So I want persistence with initial access, this one. And so now it's showing me all the insights that have persistence with initial access. Now, normally I would grab the latest one, but it looks like somebody's already taken care of that one. Okay. So we want to grab the latest new one. So I want to grab the one that came in day before yesterday, Insight 15035. And if you're following along, I want you to click on this insight. So when we open up an insight, on the left side, here's where we can see all the actions that we can take. And again, this can be customized. Your administrator can add more actions here if they want to. I can close this insight, and theoretically, I know I have the permissions to delete it. I don't think you do. Okay. I can change its status from new to in progress to whatever. I can assign this insight to one of my teammates here if I want to. This does take a minute for it to load up. There it is. So I can assign this if I want to a user. And here I can see what the entity is. The entity is this IP address. Okay. So Doreen wants me to go back from the insight. I'm assuming, Doreen, your question was, how did I get here? So if I go back, and again, you can always go back here by clicking the home button, the Sumo Logic button. And how I got here was, remember in our directions in this lab guide, it wants us to find persistence with initial access. It wants us to find that particular insight. So I went to insights to see a listing of all of my insights. And in my filters, I can filter for my name. And I'm going to say contains. And I'm going to start typing in persistence. And as I do that, it starts to filter and shows me the various things that start with the word persistence. I want the first one, persistence with initial actions. I click on that. That now is filtering all of my insights to only show me this type of insight. Now, let me be honest with you guys. This is all generated data. So these insights are all identical to one another. They happen once a day. And so they're all identical to one another. We randomly, every day we generate this insight so that we can troubleshoot this for our classes. Okay. So are we good as far as how I got here?
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for asking. All right. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to grab the one that's new. My colleagues have this one. I'm like, and by the way, we're all going to get the same results, but I'm going to grab this new one. I want you to click on this new one if you're following along and look at this insight. So when I look at an insight, I don't care what insight it is. I'm going to see the same information over here to the left. I'm going to see the information about the insight. I'm going to see what actions I can take, that I can close it. I can provide status information here and maybe move it to in progress. I can assign it to somebody. I can see what the entity is. So all of these signals that make up this insight share the same entity. And if I click on this entity, you'll see just to the right of it, I get these 6 little dots. I can click on that context action button. And again, I can do a who is lookup on this entity. Or I can do a Google web search on this entity. Or I can do a Sumo logic search and search all of our logs to see where that entity might have been. I see its overall severity score. Now, in the case of an insight, insights have severity scores of low, medium, high, and critical. Low, medium, high, and critical. The actual records that make up this insight, those have numeric scores. I see that this insight consists of 4 unique signals. It was last seen a day ago. And again, here I can see when the first event occurred, when the insight was created, what MITRE attack techniques and tactics it found. Down here at the bottom, as I resolve this and the actions that I take, here is where I document that. So once I figure out what's going on and I take actions and stuff like that, I'm gonna put my findings down here. Now over here to the right, this is all my insight, all my information about my insight. And what I'm looking at here is a timeline. So across my x-axis is time. I said there were 4 signals. The first signal I got here is a purple signal. It's a threat intelligence signal. It's not based on one of our rules. It's based on some threat intelligence we have from one of our logs. And then the other signals are over here on the right, and they are in fact rule-based. So I have 4 signals that make this up. Here are my 4 signals. The first one that occurred was a threat intel. Device IP matched a threat intel file hash. What that's trying to tell me is it found a bad file, a known bad threatening file when it did an antivirus scan result. So it found a file. Okay, one file by itself may not be the end of the world, but it's interesting to see what that file may wind up doing. Now, the next thing that happened, and I can go into these in more detail, and I will in just a minute, is I also got a notification here a little bit later. This one happened at 5/16, May 16th, at 11:15. And almost a day later, a user received a phishing email. Now, what's the same about these two things? They both share the same IP address. So a user received an email with a phishing link. And again, I can investigate this a bit further. Then the next thing that happened is about 11:10, the checkpoint threat emulation recognized that we had this malicious file. And then finally, I have a CrowdStrike message that basically said it detected some summary event. Now, what I need to do here is I need to investigate these signals a little bit more. Before I do that, though, I simply want to point something out. The first signal here has a score of 3. The next signal has a score of 4. 3 plus 4 is 7. Plus 3 more, which makes it 10. Plus 5 more makes it 15. That is greater than or equal to 12 over a 2-week period of time. That is how an insight automatically gets generated. When the sum of these signals, which are all correlated based on an entity, is greater than or equal to 12 over a 2-week period of time, it automatically generates the insight. You don't have to do it. It does it for you. Now, let's look at these signals. If I click on these signals, if I click on this threat intel, it opens up the signal, again, tells me what the severity score was, tells me what the entity information was. And if I scroll in here, basically what I'm determining is that on our device, it found a malicious file. Now, you can take a threatening virus type file and you can rename it all you want to, because most software don't look at the file names, they look at the hash of the file. They do a mathematical algorithm of the file and they come up with a file hash. And they say, gee, if I match this file, you've got a known threat. So the antivirus scan, which is done on people's computers regularly, found this file. And I can see the extracted metadata tags, the file that it found, what type of file it was, scan results, all kinds of interesting things here, right? Who the username was Vagrant, whatever. And so I can get all kinds of information. So I have a known threatening file on my computer. Great. Now, what I'd like to do is go to the next signal. And there's a couple ways to get there. One, I could go back to signals and I could click on the next signal to open it up. Okay. Or if I'm in that signal, like I am right now, over here on this timeline, if I click on this box over here to the right, it will take me to my next signal. So not only did I have an interesting file hash problem, but within the next day, somebody received an email that has a phishing link on the same computer, the same IP address. So a user has received an email with a phishing link. And again, who's the user? Vagrant at whatever. What kind of browser were they using? All that fun stuff. What's the URL? They actually clicked on this phishing link, right? So, and I can see what the fields are, information about it, the threat URL. I can find out more information about this if I want to. All kinds of fun stuff, okay? So let's take a look at the next signal. And I go back up here if I want to, click on the next signal, checkpoint threat emulation malicious file allowed. So again, our checkpoint software also found this malicious file. So not only did antivirus software find it, but so did checkpoint. And so again, we see that it's, somebody's trying to send this file from this source to this destination. Even worse, somebody's trying to promulgate the file, okay? Bill, I appreciate you letting me know. Give me a second here. I'm going to give you the lab guide. I'm uploading the lab guide now, Bill, to William, to the chat box. You should be able to pull it down from the chat box. Okay, that's how you get the labs. And then as far as accessing the labs, hang on a second. Give me a second here and I go back. Anybody else who needs the login credentials? There's your login credentials. Replace the hashtags with a 3-digit number. So use 603 if you like. All right. So that's our third signal that makes us up. So we can start seeing a story forming here, right? What's happening. And then our fourth and final signal over here, if I click on it, is a detection summary event from CrowdStrike. Let's see what this is all about. Let's go down here. Again, from my IP address here, it looks like it's trying to promulgate that file. So I tried to send that file here. So again, I can see what's going on. So ladies and gentlemen, here's my question to you. You have a known threat file type situation. You've got a user that clicked on a phishing link. You've got this file trying to promulgate. What actions would you take in your company to fix this? You could type in the chat box. You can unmute your mic and tell me what sort of actions would you do? What actions would you all take? Maybe we want to isolate this computer, right? Okay, reach out to the user, absolutely. Okay, CrowdStrike and isolate the machine until the scan is removed. There you go, good. So isolate the user, there you go. We probably want to run some virus scans, clean up that file, right? Take that file and destroy it. We obviously want to maybe talk to the user and advise them about phishing emails, remind them the dangers of phishing emails and clicking on phishing emails. So these things are things that you and I would take action on, and we would document here in our comments. And basically then we can close up the insight, right? The insight's probably all resolved. Yeah, maybe quarantine after confirmation. Absolutely. Yep. Yep. So these are all, you bring up some very good points. And these are basically the actions that we take. Now, you all work for several different companies. You all different companies have different policies on how you handle this. That's fine. You follow your company's policies, you do as you need to. But in this tool, you can document what you're doing down here. Again, if you need to, one of the last things you might do is you may need to ask for some help. So maybe you need to talk to IT, or maybe you run a JIRA ticket or something. Maybe you want to put in some sort of instant response here or whatever. So you're logging it. Maybe you notify somebody via PagerDuty. Again, this can be customized. Basically that is investigating an insight and the actions and stuff that you would take. If I want to go back to the signals, I can go back here to signals. If I want to go back to my home directory, I can go click up here in the upper left-hand corner, take me back home. Now, what I want to do is I want you to do a lab. So if you would, grab that PDF document that we've given you. And I'm going to warn you, by the way, Lab 2B does not exist, okay? The Sumo Pharma lab, that insight has been removed, okay? Lab 2C, Sumo Logic Coffee, which is on page 8, page 8 here, is the one that we're going to do. We're going to look for an insight called exfiltration with command and control. It should say with command and control, not with command and control, with command and control. So sorry about that. So if I go here to insight, and again, I want to search based on name, contains, start typing in exfiltration. Exfiltration with command and control. Again, some of these are in progress. They're all, again, duplicates of one another, just so you know. But I want you to find the latest new one, which should be Insight 679. And I want you, I'm going to give you all about 10 minutes here, actually 5 minutes, to look at this insight. Tell me what you see, how many signals, what's going on, that sort of thing. And then tell me what you're finding here. And then tell me what you would do to fix it. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I'm going to run a 5-minute timer here. And you guys go ahead and take a peek. And we'll talk about this in 5 minutes. And then after that, we'll take a break. So when this timer gets down to 0, please be ready with your findings. Okay, folks, we're back. So what did you guys find out about this exfiltration with command and control? What is it trying to tell me? And I should probably point out, if you're familiar with AWS, it probably makes sense. If you're not familiar with AWS, it may not make a lot of sense to you. Okay. So Julia tells me we have a user who's been terminated, is trying to log into AWS and appears to still have some access to temporary account credentials. Absolutely, Julia. Absolutely. So what would you do about this, Julia?
Well, probably depends on the company, but
Yep.
try to lock the account or like terminate, make sure that their access is actually terminated.
Yep. And Grant has mentioned here, we can rotate the keys as far as the AWS keys and stuff like that. When people log in through AWS API, they're usually using access keys, so this can be rotated and changed. Yep. So, yep. And maybe you definitely make sure the account is totally deleted and wiped away or whatever. So, yep. Anything else, folks? Okay. He tried to stop CrowdTrail. Yep, he tried to yeah, I understand what you're saying, try to bypass or stop CrowdTrail. So yeah, this is dangerous. And so we need to, and again, you and I don't have to do anything here. All we've got to do is let the log data and the data come in to this environment through our normal collection process. And then it gets picked up here and turned into these signals and insights. So this is very powerful as far as making it very easy for you and for I to see what's happening, right? Based on these various rules and stuff that we got set. So any questions about this? Questions, concern, okay. Report to legal and have them determine whether they get the law enforcement involved. There you go. Let's go raid the guy's, the person's house. So whatever, yeah, let's bring in the FBI. Dun, 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 dun. Anyway, yep, fun stuff. All right, anything else about this anyone wants to share before we go take a break? That's an easy way for me to say, let's take a break. So ladies and gentlemen, let's give you the 5-minute timer again. When the 5-minute timer is back and done, it reaches 0, I'd like you to be back and we will continue this class. Take a break. See you in 4 minutes and 53 seconds. And we're back. I hope you guys all had a chance to get your coffee cup filled, get some food. What we want to do now is we want to do lab 3. So if we go in here, you'll see that lab 3 is also broken up into 3 parts: lab 3A, lab 3B, and lab 3C. Again, lab 3B does not work. They've removed that insight from the system. So basically what labs 3A and 3C are about is we want to take advantage of our newfound knowledge here with regards to Cloud SIEM. And again, we want to go back in the case of lab 2A, we did persistence with initial access. In 3A, we're going to go back to that. We're going to go look for that insight, right? So name consists of persistence with initial access. Going to find our old insight here. We're going to click on that insight. And in the case of lab 3A, what we want to do is we want to show you how you can really take advantage of Sumo Logic's power, right? Not only can we see what's going on in the Cloud SIEM environment, but as you learned yesterday in the Cloud Security Analytics and Monitoring class, we can write queries against this. So here we notice that this is all about this IP. And so in this IP, I can click on these 6 dots here. And I can, if I want to, if I scroll down, I can actually send a query out to the Sumo Logic Search, the CIP, Continuous Intelligence Platform, and I can see where this IP address has been. Obviously, I probably want to run it more than 15 minutes. So let's run it over the last 7 days and see where this little IP address has been. And I can quickly see, if I go into source category and click on it, I can see all the source categories where I'm seeing this IP address referenced. So maybe I can get a sense that they were, in our Zeek environment, in our Palo environment, CrowdStrike, that sort of thing. Again, I can see, where this, what loggers, what machines have logged activity on this. I can go into various environments to do that. Additionally, we can take a query like this, and we can copy that query and paste it in here. Bear with me just a second while I paste. Whoops, excuse me. Try this again. Okay, and I need to insert the IP address here. So let me take that IP address. What we're taking advantage of here, folks, is the power of Sumo, all of Sumo. And basically running a query on it. Let's do this. Let's take out the double quotes. All right. One of the problems is when you type in, when you take stuff from a text editor, quotes and stuff become smart quotes. And so that's why I removed the quotes and had to re-add the quotes. Okay. When I click on 6 docs, the Sumo Logic searches in red and does not come back with any results. I'm not, 6 dots. Okay, I got you. Does not come back with any results. Yes, you're right, Julie. Change the time. Add, instead of 15 minutes, make it much longer. So, because by default, a query will run for 15 minutes. So, Julie, a good question. Make the time.
Oh yeah, I just said that. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So the point is that there's, now that we know that we've got these known threats, we can see what other impacts we might be experiencing here. Okay. To get a sense for, what's happening. And that's really what we're trying to convey here in lab 3. is take advantage of the power of Sumo, and not only what the Cloud SIEM environment's telling you, but run some queries in CIP to see exactly what's happening, to get a sense for what you can do. And that's what Lab 3A and 3C are doing. 3C is obviously doing it for the Cloud Sumo coffee with the PCI type stuff, PCI type security. And that's really what we're just trying to convey in Lab 3. Okay. I can only remove the last digit. Thank you. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. 102. That might help. There you go. Thank you. Appreciate it. So I can see it in my CrowdStrike environment and my proof point target and all that fun stuff. And I can see the raw messages, see where it's showing up. Okay. So there's lots of things that you can do beyond just what's in the Cloud SIEM type tool. And that's all we're trying to advocate here in Lab 3. Okay. So that takes care of Lab 3. Now, new topic, kind of the last conversation point we're going to have here in this class. What we want to do here, we continued the investigation. What we want to do is we want to talk about customizing and tuning your Cloud SIEM environment. Okay. We want to talk about maybe creating your own rules. We want to talk about maybe creating rule tuning and stuff like that. So what are Cloud SIEM rules? A Cloud SIEM rule is a logical code that deploys based on the information of the incoming records. It compares the incoming records against this rule. If there's a match, it fires and generates a signal. So signals are known instances of rule violations, if you will. Okay. Remember, those records are things that come in from our data. And like I said, if those records match our rules, it generates a signal. And that signal has a severity level, has a score of some sort. Now, there are 4 types of custom rules that you and I can create. 4 types. A match rule. We are going to create a match rule in this course. You and I will. Okay. A match rule is based on a Boolean condition, right? A single successful login from a specific IP address, which is on a banned list. It's a simple Boolean condition, right? IP address is in banned list. Another match rule might be something like, the username is such and such or whatever. There's a threshold rule, which means that I'm going to have a certain number of records that match a given condition. So here I want to see failed 5 login attempts under 1 hour. Now the threshold rules we have an exercise to do in the admin class, the Cloud SIEM admin class. As same with the chain rule. We do a chain rule exercise in the class. A chain rule is like two or more thresholds combined. So you're going to have 2 or 3 different events in a given time limit. So again, maybe I've got 5 failed login attempts followed by a successful login attempt, all within an hour. That's an example of chain. One condition, different condition within the same rule. And then finally, the last rule type that we have is an aggregation rule. And again, I want to aggregate a bunch of records within a specific time range. So I want to see how many different IP address connections that occur under, from a single IP address within a specific hour. Okay. So these are the 4 custom rule types, and you'll see a test question or 2 on these. Okay. We are going to do a match rule in this class, threshold and chain we do in the Cloud SIEM admin classes, just so you know. And here's the interface when we go ahead and create a rule, and I'm going to walk you through that in just a little bit. So what happens is over here on the left is the logic that's going to fire the rule. And then on the right, what that signal is going to contain, what the entity is, what the name of it is, the summary, the description, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to do a lab. We're going to create a custom rule. And again, over here on the left is going to be our custom if statement or condition. And if it matches that condition, then it's going to go ahead and run. We can also optionally add a rule tuning expression. I'll explain what a rule tuning expression is in just a few minutes. So just bear with me. Rule tuning expressions are simply the exception to the rule. Okay. And then once we have this condition exist, what do we want the signal to say? What's information about the signal? And what score do we want to use? Couple of best practices when you want to write your own custom rules. Remember, first of all, we write a bunch of rules and we provide them for you. We maintain those rules. Those rules are maintained by us, okay? But if you write your own custom rules, one, check and see if an existing rule already exists, right? See if that rule exists. Use our rules rather than create your own. Know your own system well. You know, what kind of threats are you experiencing? Is there some specific rules that you have within your company that we probably ought to know, or that you may want to modify your rules and stuff about? You know, every company is a little different, has their own specific systems and has their own specific issues. Know your risk appetite priorities, right? If you're a simple software company, yeah, your risk appetite is probably not terribly worrisome. If you're a bank or you deal with patient records and stuff like that, your risk appetite is obviously a lot less, right? Can't handle a lot of risk. So again, make sure your rules all support that. Understand the 4 rule types well. Make small changes and test. And if you need to change again, make small changes and test. So it's a iterative process. And most importantly, and I'll talk about this in I'll say the detail, whenever you create a new rule, save it as a prototype. There's a little checkbox at the bottom that says, make this a prototype. Make it a prototype to monitor and test behavior. Now, when you make it a prototype, what happens is the rule will fire, but it will not be used to generate any insights. So you're testing your rule to see if it fires and that sort of thing, but it's not going to generate any insights. You could theoretically create a rule that very quickly generates a whole bunch of insights. And so you don't want that to happen. So you mark it as a prototype to test it first, without sending your SOC team into the world of crazy. Okay. Now, I mentioned about rules. You can create rules. 4 rules, again, match, chain, threshold, and aggregate. Rule tuning, something else that you can do. You can apply exceptions to the rules. Rule tunings you apply to a rule, so you don't have to rewrite that rule from scratch. Okay. You can take a rule tuning expression. You can apply it to multiple rules if you want to. You can have a rule applied by multiple rule tuning expressions if you want to. And this takes advantage of the Cloud SIEM automatic security updates. So as we modify the rules, your rule tuning is still applied to that rule, even if we update that rule. So your rule tunings are typically exceptions to the rule. And last but not least, you can create an insight. Remember, what is an insight? If I get a bunch of signals generated and the score is high enough over a certain period of time, correlated by an entity, it will generate an insight. Well, maybe I want, when a particular rule fires, I want to generate an insight automatically. You can do that. You can create a custom insight if you want to. Okay. Faith asks, are we able to have access to the slides after the training? Yes, you are. You can have access to the slides at any time. And again, I think I put a link of where those slides are, but if you give me just a chance here, I will copy that link out here again for anybody's use. So there you go, Faith. There is the link to where the slides and recordings and stuff are. Okay. All right. So insights. Remember that an insight is nothing more than a collection of rules, a collection of signals that score over a certain value, right? So here I've got these green boxes, I've got these red triangles, and I've got these blue circles. Again, these all, the shapes represent an insight. They're going to have an insight. And the numbers in here are the scores of the individual signals for those insights. So what happens is I have an automated slide here that when the slide gets done and combines its insights, we see that 4 plus 2 plus 1 plus 3 plus 2 is greater than 12 or 10 over a 2-week period of time. So it generates an insight. This one up here, 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1, is not greater than 12. Therefore, it does not generate an insight. Okay. These others do. So the question is, what's going to generate an insight? What's not going to generate an insight? Again, the individual signals have got to be, when correlated, greater than 12. Add up to greater than or equal to 12. All right. Custom insights, if you decide to create them, are based on one rule or a chain of rules. Allow for faster learning for specific known threats. So you could create a custom insight based on your environment for some threats that you're aware of, okay? No rule changes. You don't have to change any changes to existing rules or insights. For example, maybe you've got a neighbor who jumps on your internet, right? And you want to be aware of when they jump on your internet. You could create an insight to notify you that they're jumping on your internet or something like that. So we've talked about three things. We talked about rule tuning, which allows you to create exceptions to existing rules, how you and I can write custom rules to create it when we have a known threat or a data source that's unique to our system. And we can also create custom insights. And that's what's going to be our last three labs that we're going to spend the last few minutes on doing. So we're going to do labs 4, 5, and 6. So if I go back here to our PDF, and if I go to page 18, it talks about writing a rule tuning expression. Now, one thing I'm going to ask of you, when we get around to naming these things, I want you to be specific in what you name them, because there's some specific things I want you to use. The reason I want you to use these is when we're done with class, I have to find these and clean these things up, okay? So I need your help in, when we do this, to make sure that you name your rules, your rule tunings and stuff, a specific thing. So when I go into my Sumo Logic Cloud SIEM environment, the way that we create rules and rule tuning and all that stuff is here under content. And again, I've got a lot more options than you do. I have full administrative rights here, but you do have an option called rule tuning. And in lab 4, I want you to click on rule tuning. And here on rule tuning, okay, no problem, Gabriel, thanks. Rule tuning, see, we do have an example here of a rule tune that somebody created, and that's fine, okay? Normally, your system doesn't come with any rule tuning. Remember, rule tunings are the exception to the rule. So I will apply rule tuning to a rule that I want to create an exception. Interesting. I'll look into that, David, thanks. All right, so here in rule tuning, again, if you forgot where I went here, I went into Cloud SIEM, went into content, went into rule tuning. And you and I are going to click create. And here for the name, what I want you to do is I want you to type your initials, and I want you to type the word rule tuning. Because after the class is over, I'm going to find all the things that say rule tuning, and I'm going to remove them. Okay. Now it says tune selected rules, or I could tune all rules. Well, I don't want to tune all rules. I want to tune the selected rules. And what I want to do is, let's give you the use case here. The use case is, normally we would be alerted if somebody modified my checkpoint firewall, right? If somebody was playing with my checkpoint firewall settings, I would want to be modified. That would have been, we've been notified. But I don't want to be notified if my administrator of my checkpoint firewall is doing the work, right? So I want to create an exception. So the rule I'm looking for here, and I'm going to just type in the word firewall. And when I type in the word fire, you'll see I've got a bunch of different firewalls. I'm going to grab this checkpoint firewall, even though it's disabled. I would normally enable it, but this makes it a safe thing to do. I'm going to grab this checkpoint firewall. Now, what I can do here is I can say I want to include or I want to exclude records that match this expression. And here's where we're going to do a little Boolean logic. All right, those of you who hated Boolean logic in college, well, then you're going to probably not like this. So here's my rule. If I'm going to go down here, I'm going to type in. And as I start typing in, I'm going to type in user. And notice when I start typing the word user, it says user automated domain, email, role, all kinds of stuff. I want their email address. Now, user email, normally I would say equals. And then when we put in strings in this tool we use single quotes. So when I type in the first single quote, it automatically adds my ending single quote, puts my cursor in between them. So what I'm doing is I'm saying that this particular email address is mine. Now, here's where we get into the Boolean logic. I'm applying this rule to my checkpoint firewall. And if I wanted to include all the records that have, right now, the way this is written, it will fire only if the email address is mine. Just not what I want. I'm the administrator. So what I can do in front of the equal sign is I can put the exclamation mark in. And I can say, look, I want you to fire off all rules, include all rules that do not have my email address. So it won't fire for me, but it will fire for somebody else. Will fire for anybody else. Because I'm the administrator of my checkpoint firewall. I don't want you to fire off when I'm doing maintenance. Now, this is where we get into that Boolean logic stuff. So again, this is correct as it is. Another way that I can make it correct is I can get rid of the exclamation mark and I can say to exclude. So it's going to fire this rule off except for this condition. So I don't care which way you want to go, but you and I would create this rule, click submit, and it's now going to add this rule tuning here. And if I go back here to rule tuning in the upper left-hand corner or click submit, either one, I will then see, I go in here to rule tuning, I should see my rule tuning here in just a minute. It does take a minute for the system to update. And I can see a couple of your rule tunings are now in here. Thank you. And that is lab number 4. That's how we do some rule tuning. Again, making exceptions to the rules. Lab 5, if we go back to our documentation here in the middle of page 19, we are going to create a custom match rule. So we're going to go out here to content. We're going to go here to rules. And here in my rules, I can see all of my existing rules. And this is where things get to be fun because a lot of these rules came with the system. These are rules that Sumo Logic provides for you. We are the owner of these rules, okay? The only way I'm going to find our rules is if we use some good naming convention. So when we want to create a rule, and we're going to go ahead and create a rule, we'll click create here, okay? Here's our 4 types. Do I want a match rule, a threshold rule, a chain rule, an aggregation rule? We're going to choose match rule, and we are going to name this with our initials, and we're going to use the word match rule. That way I can go back in here and I can look for any match rules, and I can then delete them and clean this thing up for the next class tonight. Now, again, over here on the left is my rule logic that's going to cause the rule to fire. Over here is what the entity is that I want to see. What do I want to see for the signal? So per my directions, it wants me to add this expression. Now, I'm going to warn you, you can, I can, we can swipe over this lovely text, copy this lovely text, and paste this lovely text. The problem is it's not going to resolve correctly. The reason it's not going to resolve correctly is because these quotes. When in a text editor, when you put in quotes, actually a true text editor doesn't modify the quotes at all. But in Word or certain softwares, it makes them smart quotes. So if I get rid of the quotes and I re-add the quotes, single quote, that fixes the problem. Okay. Or I could have, I get rid of this, started in typing in device. And again, you'll see I've got a bunch of choices here. Device IP equals single quote 127.0.0.1, which we all know is the loop IP, like loopback IP. Now, this is my rule. Here I can apply a rule exception to that if I want to, a rule tuning expression, right? We just talked about that. Now, if this condition exists, what entity do I want to talk about? Since we're talking about device IP, the entity we're probably going to want to report out is device IP. Makes sense. And then here for the name, I can put in anything I want to. Crazy IP found, whatever. And with a summary. Someone is using the loopback IP, and for description, Houston, we have a problem, whatever. So these are fields that you and I can use. Now, one thing I should do, if you'll bear with me just a second, let me get rid of this. You'll notice down here at the bottom that I have this lovely gold triangle. And this gold triangle tells me when I'm missing certain fields, and it won't let me hit submit until I do. So it says a signal name is required, a description is required. Great, okay. Okay. Once you fill in all the blanks, and that should go away. And that means we can eventually hit submit, okay? Now, again, what value do I want? If I find this loopback ID, I don't know about you, but I see so many times there's a loopback ID. That to me is a very minor issue. So maybe I'll score it. And by the way, when I look at this selector, you'll see it goes from 0 to 10. So for those of you who see the test question, it's 0 to 10. Or maybe I'll make this one a 1. It's not very serious. And then most importantly, down here at the bottom, if I scroll to the bottom, here is where I can make this a prototype. When I make this a prototype, remember, it will not be used to generate an insight. So this, even if it may fire or whatever, it won't cause an insight to be fired off. Always, 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 when you're creating a rule, mark it, check it, do it, okay? I don't care how many years you've been doing this, do it. Because if you start creating a rule and you think, I know this won't create an insight, and it starts generating insights and starts driving your SOC team crazy, well, then they're going to come knocking on your door. You want this to fire without generating insights first, make sure it works. Then you can come back in here and clear. So then when I click submit, I can now see here is this rule. I can see if it's fired. Now, my rule has not fired yet, right? I don't see any highlight colors here. Let me show you what it looks like when a rule fires. So I go back to my rules, and if I look web request to IP address, if I go in here, I can see I've got some highlighted things. That means this rule has fired. Okay, that's basically what that's all about. And so now I've got here our rules. And if I go down here and say created, and if I click on created again, so it puts it in descending order, there are all of our lovely match rules. And that is lab number 5. Done. Lab number 6, and our last rule, our last thing, is we are going to create a custom insight. So we want to create a custom insight. Again, how do we do that? We go up here to, we go up here to content. We go up here to custom insight. And here is where you and I can create a custom insight. Now, again, what this insight is going to do is when this rule fires, we want to generate an insight, period. Okay, something we want to do. Notice by default down here, my golden triangle is telling me it's missing some things. It sure is. As far as the name up here at the top, I'd like you to use your initials and the word custom insight. Use your initials and custom insight. Now over here, what's going to cause this to be triggered, right? I can trigger it based on certain signal names, or I can trigger it based on certain rules. So I'm going to choose rules, and then I'm going to find a rule. I'm going to go ahead and find my custom rule, my match rule that I just created. Now, if I've got more than one rule, I can specify in any order, exact order, or whatever. logic here. Again, it's going to create a custom insight with this name. Pick this name from my name up here and my description. Whatever you want to put in here. Again, insights have low, medium, and high and critical as far as their scores here. And you know what I just realized I missed? Something I missed in the rule. I forgot to point out. I'll come back to it in a second. Here's where I can put in my MITRE attack techniques and tactics things. And I didn't do that for the rule. My apologies. So here, maybe it's under initial access. Is the tactic and technique. So you and I can go in here and associate this with the MITRE attack framework. Okay. And then we can click submit. Now, I forgot to point out that when you create a rule, you also apply the MITRE attack framework. So let me see if I can find my rule here real quick. There it is. Let me go ahead and edit it. I forgot the tags down here. That's my fault. So you can apply, again, various tactic and technique stuff here. Okay. And that, folks, is lab number 6. And that pretty well wraps up the course. What questions have you? What questions have you? Hopefully the slide will load. Not sure why it's taking so long to load. Try it again. This time maybe with feeling. It's taking a while. Okay, there you go. Any questions you guys have about the content? Okay, then. What do you say we get ready to go take an exam? As far as taking the exam goes, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and you're logged into the training environment, right? You're logged in as training analyst with whatever number. So what I need you to do is I need you to log out of that. So again, as far as the Cloud SIEM environment, we can go ahead and close that tab. As far as Sumo Logic, I want you to log out of that because I don't want training analysts would ever get credit for the exam. I want you to get credit for the exam. So you want to log out. And the way you log out, I forgot to point this out, my apologies. The way you log out is if you need to, you can go into the navigation panel over here on the left, open it up. Down here on the lower left-hand corner, you will see your account name. Click on it. And if you click on it, it changes, adds a whole bunch of commands here. The last one is sign out. That is how you log out. Now, the reason I want you to log out is I want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment to take the exam. So log into your company's Sumo Logic environment with your credentials. Why? So that you, by your name, get credit for this. Okay, that's the goal. So you're going to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment with your login credentials. So that down here on the lower left, you hopefully see your first name and your last name. And then to get to the certification exam, as most of you know, if you click on this house tab and you click on certification and you click on get certified, it will then take you into our learning management system. And in our learning management system, this is where the get certification exams are. But before I go there, I want to show you something. Up here in the upper right-hand corner is your profile, my profile, our profile, whatever. And if I click on my profile, and you can add an image if you want to here, I did. just to prove a point. And it's got your information, your first name, your last name, and all that good stuff. But it also keeps track of all the exams that you've taken. And if you've passed an exam, you can view the certificate of that exam. You can also add it to your certifications in your LinkedIn profile by clicking this button. So it'll do all that stuff for you. No fuss, no muss. It will not create a new post that says, congratulations, I've done this. It doesn't do that. It simply adds it to your certifications. So we keep track of all of your certifications. If you go in here and you just took an exam like yesterday, the day before, and you don't see it in here, there's probably a good reason. And I'm going to get into that good reason here in just a second, why it's not there. It should be there. So let me scroll all the way to the bottom and I can click the done button here. As far as taking the certification exam, if I click on get certified, you'll see that we've got all of our certification exams by language, by whatever. So I'm going to choose English. I'm going to choose Cloud SIEM. And I see I've got a question here. Sure. Rick, you want me to go ahead and repeat this section after we sign out. So, okay, let me do that. So again, in Sumo logic, oops, get rid of that. After I sign out of Sumo logic, I want you all to sign into your company's Sumo logic environment. I don't know what the URL is. Probably not service.sumologic.com. It's probably us2. Whatever. But I want you to go into your company's Sumo logic account. It's going to ask you for credentials to log in. So provide those credentials. So you need to do this from your company's environment, not from our training environment. Okay. Then to get to the certification exams, you click on where the house is up here, the house tab, certification tab right underneath it, get certified underneath that. That takes us to the learning management system. Now, to get certified, you would click on the Get Certified panel. And on that Get Certified panel, as I said, if you want to, you can filter by English, in this case by Cloud SIEM. And I can see I've got two exams here. Cloud SIEM Fundamentals, Cloud SIEM Administration. This is the Fundamentals class. This is the one we just took. So you can click on that and you'll have to register. I click on the button and boom, you're registered. Piece of cake, okay? And you'll see here, there's some things you get to go through. No problem, no worries. Okay, so here we go, we click start and it says, before you start, you have 20 questions, only 20 questions. It's a new exam, 60 minutes to complete it and the passing score is 70. So it's a little less than the other, normally it's 75. This is new test. We're trying to make it easy for you. When I click next, there's a terms of use. You can't copyright this. You can't copy this information down. All stuff. It's it's proprietary and all that fun stuff. And then when you click next, it takes you to the exam itself. Now here I've got a 1 hour or 60-minute timer up here. It says there are 20 questions, 60 minutes, and I've only taken this my first attempt. So when you're ready to start, you click on ready to start. And now it says, what is the severity range of for signals? Severity range I mentioned was 0 to 10. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and click next. What combination of rules and severity scores would trigger an insight by default settings? Okay, remember it's got to be 12 or greater. So that's 1. That's 1. Okay. These other ones wouldn't be the case. Now I've only answered 2 questions. And I'm going to go over here to the left where I can see my summary of my questions. And I'm going to say, hey, submit my answers. They said, wait, you didn't answer all the questions. Are you sure you want to submit? I am. I'm going to fail, I know, but I want to show you something. When I failed or whatever I did here, I can see what questions I got right, what questions I got wrong. I don't know what I got right. I don't know specifically what I got wrong, but I can see which ones I got right, which ones I got wrong. But here's the problem. Remember earlier I mentioned if you go into your profile and you don't see a certification, it's probably because when you get done with the exam and you passed it, don't forget to click this button. If you didn't click this button, the exam did not get put in your profile. So every time you take an exam, pass it, make sure you click this button. If you don't pass it, you probably need to click this button so you can take it again anyway. Speaking of which, if you don't pass, you can take it again at any time, as many times as you want. You need no action from me as far as resetting your account or anything like that. So feel free, but hopefully you guys are going to be good to go. One other thing I want to mention to you, and that is I will be here while you're taking the exam. So if you get stuck on a question, don't hesitate to ask. Let me know, and I will gladly do what I can to help you out. Okay. Somebody mentioned that the slides did not appear to be right. So if you'll bear with me just a second, I want to check that out. Get certified again here in my recorded live training. Here's where the slides are. If I go into Cloud SIEM fundamentals, and if
Hey everybody, my name is Josh Broltheim. I'm the training manager.
There's a recording of Josh there. Let me go ahead and download this real quick and see if these are in fact right. Okay, these slides may be slightly different, but the content is still good. So the content should be fine. You shouldn't have a problem. These are the right slides. Okay. Okay, yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think these are going to be fine. So, but if you get stuck on a question, don't hesitate to ask. I will be here. Otherwise, are there any questions before I turn this over to you guys and have you guys take your exams? Let me go ahead and stop my sharing, or my recording here. Also, let me say that, again, thank you. I know you guys have been with us all week, so we appreciate it. So I appreciate all your hard work and effort. We hope to see you in class again real soon. Otherwise, like I said, let me see if I can't stop the recording.